They saw it coming, they saw it coming. Darren was missing at the time. If you'd have been there, you would have seen it. Where do we draw the line? You know how hard it is to report your husband missing? Darren, for example, you file a report, he is missing, done, but no, they wouldn't take the report. DJ reports it, they ignored him. I report it, they dismiss me. I report it again and they forget me, so I am not reporting it anymore. In fact, Darren isn't missing at all. He's on a beach with a margarita and his new girlfriend, Gilbert PD. Thank you for being useless. They saw it coming. They saw it coming. Darren was missing at the time. If you'd have been there, you would have seen it. Where do we draw the line? When I met Darren, he was a real charmer. He was good to me, paid attention to me, bought me things, took me on trips, swept me off my feet. Then we got married. It all changed. He drank more, paid attention to me less, never bought me anything. The only trips we shared were his guilt trips that I spent too much money. That's when I discovered his worst trait. He was broke, so yeah, I did it. I refied that house for all it was worth. After all, it was community property.
And we're live at Socialite Crime Club. Welcome.
Hey.
Hi,
How
Socialite.
exciting.
Yeah, it's our first live.
We're like baby walruses right now. So stand by, people. This is going to get interesting. We have a lot of technology here. See, look, I can do some really cool stuff over here. If Keri is doing something really smart, I can be like, say something smart.
That's hard to do sometimes, something
Okay.
smart.
Or we can go over here and I can say, hello, Socialite. So we've got some really cool stuff. If I'm over here playing around, that's what I'm trying to figure out. If for some reason the entire episode just tanks, we can always just kind of cut over to one of these and be like, oh, stand by, give us a few minutes. So thanks, Socialites. Welcome.
We're glad you're here.
Tell some of our new visitors what's going on here.
Yeah, so if this is your first time visiting at Socialite Crime Club, you've never actually seen an episode, or you're just dropping in for the live, Cy and I are married. We were ex-law enforcement. Cy had a very long career in law enforcement, and we enjoy bringing people educational content no matter what we do. If we're working on something as it relates to law enforcement, we like to make it educational. If we're bringing anything to the public, we like to make it educational, and we enjoy transparency in everything that we do. We'll try to answer questions as we can, as best to our knowledge, and that's just our thing. That's what we
A little
do.
entertaining if we can.
Yeah.
So our typical format is we will drop an episode every Wednesday, except we may have a program coming up where certain people get to see it early. So stick around for that. And then every Sunday, we're going to do some type of a live that we go behind the scenes and really talk a little bit more about what's going on with it. So some interesting things coming there. The other thing we've got to throw a shout out. I don't know if anybody's watching our subscribers.
Our subscribers a little off the hook. It's fun.
Where are we at?
We're at just over 56,000 subscribers now.
I can't confirm it, but I think based on subscribers, we might be the fastest growing true crime podcast on YouTube right now.
Yeah, so thank you to all of our socialites who have shared us with your friends, your family. If you've talked about us and help us grow a bit organically, we really thank you.
Yeah. We're almost to 5 million views overall, the entire channel. 5 million.
That is crazy to me
Right?
because it is hard to grow on YouTube. It's very hard to monetize on YouTube. Trust us.
You don't monetize on YouTube.
Yeah, don't be a YouTuber.
This is a terrible business plan. Just
Yeah,
so
if you
guys
want to
are
make
aware.
money, it's hard on YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to try something here, Keri.
Okay.
See if I can
what are
get
we
this to
trying?
work right. You got a comment this week that you didn't want me to leave out. Why don't you tell everybody?
Sure. So Nikki, if you're out there, Nikki is not in your username for Socialite Crime Club or your handle, but
And it's
I know,
NICCI.
yes, she requested that we give her a bit of a birthday shout out. So we have something special for you. Here it comes. Happy birthday, Nikki. That's the best we could do. But
Sorry. Told you we got some dumb technology in
we
here.
thought it was fun and engaging. So happy birthday. Thank you for being with us and being a great socialite. We appreciate you.
Yeah. The other thing I want to throw out real quick, everybody say hi to Bree. If you like our content, the look, the feel, everything we got going on, Bree is the marketing ninja. She has got her head wrapped around social media like nobody we know. She is largely responsible for our look and feel. She keeps me accountable. She makes me do things over and over again until I get it right. So she's also one of our moderators tonight. So feel free to give Bree some love. We could not do what we're doing without her. And I think Anwar might be poking around too, but we haven't seen him yet. So hopefully Anwar. Thank you, Bree. Little shout out there. We have something else to talk about that's new.
Oh, we have swag. So we
Swag.
have opened up a storefront, Socialites, and we have everything from hoodies there to watch straps for your iWatch. And we have mugs. We have a lot of different things coming. We're going to have a yoga mat coming. We have some different branding strategies that we're pushing out for everybody's different types of styles and what their likes are. So we hope that you click into our storefront and maybe buy some swag to help promote us a little bit if you really enjoy our content and enjoy sharing us.
Yeah, and if you're curious where to go for that, it's on our YouTube homepage. If you, instead of looking at the home or the video or the shorts, just scroll all the way to the right, and there is the store, and I have it up on the screen now. So yeah, jump in there, see what you want. And for joining us tonight, I think we're going to give away a couple free sweatshirts tonight. How are we going to do that?
So Sai caught me earlier and said, hey, how many people do you think will join the live tonight? And I said, probably about 85. And what did you say to me?
Wait, I have a button for this.
This is the technology part. Oh.
So what we were going to do is Keri had her number and I had my number. Keri just announced to everybody what her number was, and everybody was going to guess what it is. So we're going to take Keri's number out, and everybody's going to have to rely on my number now.
So sorry.
So Keri and I both guessed like what would be our peak number of people at any given time on tonight's live. And now what we're going to have to change.
I'm sorry.
Instead of giving a sweatshirt for whoever gets closest to Keri's number and whoever gets as closest to mine, we're going to give 2 sweatshirts to whoever gets closest to mine.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, one of us is an optimist and one is a pessimist. And I will say pest.
I like to consider myself a realist.
So there's a little hint to our socialites about where you should maybe guess. But what we'll do is at the end of the episode, we're going to look. So everybody now, see, Miss Potts is on it. She's leading the charge here by already throwing her number out. So just so everybody's clear, if you put 2 numbers in the chat, you're disqualified. So you have to play fair. And at the end of the episode, we'll throw my number up and we'll throw Keri's up again, but she might have got ahead of herself there.
Sorry, socialites.
And then okay.
What?
All right. Are you ready to get to it? What else do we have?
I felt like we were going to talk about something else, but I don't remember. It'll come up.
Okay. Let's just get into our episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So those of you who watched this week, we had the Darren episode. Poor Darren.
Yeah. Should we talk a little bit about the mug for this episode and why we called the episode Draw the Line?
Yeah. Bree can throw that up there for us probably.
Yeah. So Bree, if you'll put up our...
Why was it Draw the Line?
So this episode was originally written, we wrote it as a script. We were thinking, hey, it would be fun to make some type of mini documentary or a mini movie out of this. So months ago, probably back in December, we started writing this episode as a script because it's just so wild. It's just so unpredictable and out there. And a lot of the things that happened within this case are somewhat entertainingly funny, but at the same time, it's super dark. And we do see a lot of true crime, and I can't say true crime, criminal comedy content that is made, but at the same time, this was true crime. So we didn't know, where do we draw the line with humor and this being true crime? So that's what we originally called the script, was where do we draw the line? Because We were actually going to have like musical. We wanted to turn it into a musical with a cell block tango feel. But then our kids gently reminded us of something called cancel culture. So
Which we don't have
I thought that
on
doesn't
lives. We don't have the pause button, so be careful.
Yeah, that didn't sound fun at all. So we decided to make it just an episode, and make it as engaging and educational and entertaining as possible, because it is a crazy case and people do weird things all the time. So we wanted to make it somewhat fun and enlightening for people at the same time.
Yeah, and there's part of it for me that if we don't include some humor in our crime stories, and I know some people get really off put, like they'll be like, I can't believe these two are laughing about this. I've got to explain something to the true crime community. Coming from a law enforcement perspective, if you can't find some humor in this stuff, it will absolutely destroy you. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. I still work active cases. I want to clarify something. There's no comment needed. I have more prosecution cases than I do defense cases right now that are active that I'm working on. So I still work a lot of these cases today. And man, you've got to find the little bits of humor. And if you really dig into cases, you can't help it. You will absolutely find those little things that just you have to giggle at. Darren's was a lot. And I remember when we were working that case, we would have these meetings and we would think, what the hell is going on here? So we try to bring that not to be offensive, but to really digest this and understand it and to make it educational. I think we have to have a little bit of humor tied in there.
Right. But I also think there's a bigger piece, which I've commented to people. If you guys monitor our comments and watch our comments, I really try to be aware of where people are at within the climate of true crime and where they may overstep a boundary or where we're overstepping boundaries that we need to be aware of within our content. But it is concerning to me when people don't realize how dark a lot of this humor, or I can't say humor, how dark a lot of the content is that we bring, and that have a very difficult time finding humor in such a dark place. So I try to address those appropriately, and so does Cy.
Yeah. And sometimes inappropriately. I am seeing a lot of familiar faces on the comments, by the way. We don't have time to make all the calls, but man, that is so cool to see. And I've got to do a call out to Lana, of course. Truth and transparency. I know you brought a bunch of people with you tonight. Thank you. Like, we super appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And Cy cool. Is I, according to you.
Let's not go down that. Okay, let's get into our episode. There's a couple things I think our audience might be interested to learn about corporate America and law enforcement.
Yeah.
So those of you who don't know, Keri came over from the corporate America side of the house. You were an executive at Target before you became a cop.
Yeah.
How much did you love that?
It was fun for a while. And I was really excited I did some real estate after that, which I didn't like. And then I became a cop, and I really liked law enforcement because although there is a chain of command, you don't have the hierarchy of, terrible decisions and micromanagement.
Well, you can.
Well, you do have the hierarchy in corporate, of micromanagement, but in law enforcement, it's not as prolific. And you do have people who make bad decisions or say things that are wrong. But I think overall, you have a lot more freedom as an officer or a detective to say things because you are held to a higher ethical and moral standard.
You can totally
that
hold people
you
accountable.
Are held accountable for over time.
So I want to get into that a little bit because this might actually help some people digest things that they're seeing on other cases out there. And I want to get into crime scene responsibility, crime scene control a little bit, because I've got a funny little backstory on this case. So those of you that have seen the case this week, we worked for months, and then finally we got the confession from Aubrey Muncie. Then Clarence gave up his piece. We knew Sharon was going, we knew she was the mastermind, if you will. So we had a team set up on Sharon. When she came home, we arrested her in her driveway. Kind of a funny story. I was the first one to actually interview Sharon. And when she was arrested, it was a different team. It was one of our little SWAT team components. And because she was supposed to have a gun. That's why I don't want people being like, oh, they used a SWAT team. No, she was supposed to be armed. So we arrest her, though, and I'm the first one that interviewed her, and she wanted to know why we were arresting her. And I explained to her, well, Sharon, you're under arrest for murder. We believe that you killed your husband, Darren. And she said, wait, are you telling me my husband is dead? And I'm like, yes, Sharon, your husband is dead. We believe that you not only killed him, but you cut him up into pieces. And she says, wait, are you really serious? My husband is dead? And she puts on this whole act. So it was kind of funny. After that, we have to serve a search warrant on her house. And I had a sergeant at the time who, I won't say he was known for cutting corners, but he's not going to go out of his way to really get in there, if you know what I mean.
To write an extra report.
Yeah. So we get to the house. We've got our search warrant. We're doing a quick briefing with our search team of, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's your job, your job, your job. And he kind of pulls me aside and he tells me 2 or 3 hours. 2 or 3 hours and we're out of here. And I'm thinking, we can't do this in 2 or 3 hours. We've been working this case for months. This is where the homicide occurred. This isn't going to happen. And the reason I wanted to get into the story a little bit is supervisors typically do not testify on the casework. As a supervisor on a crime scene, typically you're just directing everybody, but it's the worker bees who are touching things, photographing things, collecting things. Those are the ones that are going to testify in court. And I remember sitting there thinking, if I am in and out of here in 2 or 3 hours, we're going to completely screw this up in court. And then I'm going to have to testify in court to why we rushed it. So I kind of jumped the chain of command there, which you can do in law enforcement. And I pulled the lieutenant aside and I said, hey, this is a days, not hours. We need to change our focus here. We really need to focus in.
Well, I also think it's important for people to realize that when there is a primary detective who gets on scene somewhere, it is not uncommon and it's actually expected for them to take control of the scene. And that means even telling command, get out of my scene.
Yeah.
If they're overstepping an area where they're going to leave their DNA behind, or they're going to create issues with evidence, or they don't know enough about what's going on, they haven't collected enough information, and they just automatically want to come in and bully everybody there. It's a thing where the person on scene, even if they're below that chain of command, they say leave.
Yeah. And this may kind of strike people odd. And I'm sure a handful of people are going to be like, you guys can't do that type of stuff. Like, you can't just jump the chain. And there's other people who will probably look at this and be like, that's not how it works. But it is. And I've told people throughout my entire career, if you're making everybody you work with happy as a cop, you're probably not doing your job. You're going to piss some people off because there's times that you're going to have to take a stand in what's up there. So I knew we were going to have to process this scene for days. And I wanted to get a little bit into the blood. We had Clarence's confession of how this went down in the hallway. And just a quick reminder, this is where he stabs Darren in the hallway. Darren kind of stumbles back and he falls along the wall and he's laying there and he's asking Sharon, why are you doing this to me? And that famous quote that I'll never forget Clarence makes is, just shut up and die, is what Sharon says.
Yeah.
So us recovering some blood evidence consistent to that statement was really important. And we used something called Blue Star. A lot of you might be familiar with what's called luminol. And luminol is a reactant that when you spray it and it interacts with blood, it actually glows under like a black light. It also has a lot of false positives. So it's not uncommon to have a lot of false positives as you're spraying a house. Let's say you collect 100 samples, maybe 10 of them are actual blood. The other 90 are other things. Blue Star was a little bit better, but it had to be completely black, dark in the house. So we would use plastic and put it over all the windows, and then we would go in shifts. This house took 6 days to process. I got a little picture here we'll throw up. This is her living room. You'll notice the carpet is gone. We've processed all of the carpet. We removed it, and actually that went to the lab. In that back wall, you see the Pac-Man stuff. She had a little video game, a Pac-Man video game. She might have bought that with the life insurance money, by the way. She had a little Pac-Man video game at the wall there. But you can kind of see the staining on the wall back there. That's the spraying of the Blue Star. And then as it drips down the wall, it'll start to react with blood. Anywhere we see that reaction, we have to take a sample. So you can see where we cut a piece of the wall out there. And if you think about, we got to do one wall, then the other wall, then the ceiling, then another wall.
The blinds.
The jukebox. right? It just takes forever, and you have to document it as you go. You have to photograph it as you go. It's really hard to photograph because it's completely pitch black in there when you're doing this. So you have to have somebody who really knows how their photography or the photography side of this works.
So did somebody not want you to do this?
Yeah, our sergeant said we had 3 hours to get the search warrant and go home because of overtime and some other things. Like he was trying to manage the administrative side of the investigation.
Didn't you say he was also like going to be leaving on vacation or something?
Yeah, I think he was ready to go and he didn't want to be there. And the lieutenant just said, why don't you go home? We got this one. And then 6 days later, it's like a SpongeBob, 6 days later.
So one of the goals that we're trying to do with our lives is bring you other behind the scenes information that we didn't bring to you in an episode. Maybe things that we forgot to mention, or
Right.
things that we just couldn't necessarily build into the episode appropriately, or things that we just want to save for a live or for memberships later on.
Yeah, we'll always have some cool details to come. So I have a really interesting photo that I want to get into here. Let's throw this one up. What do we do when we do get that perfect stain? And what we get here is when Darren was stabbed, the way he was stabbed, we get a little thing called arterial spurt. This gets really gross. We've got a blood spatter course coming up, by the way, that we're going to do a live on. I'm putting Keri in one of those white painter suits, and I'm going to smash things on her to show the way that blood flies and flows and hits things. Act like you're excited,
It's
please.
going to be amazing.
So this is very similar to that, where we get arterial spurt. An arterial spurt is where an artery is punctured and it will literally spurt as the heart pumps.
I'm thinking some, what's the Kill Bill?
Yeah,
show?
well, not quite as bloody, but yes, along those lines. And we got that with the Blue Star in the hallway with a big smear where you could see the arterial spurt and then some type of transfer, most likely a body, against the wall, and it slowly starts to slide a little bit. So we get this transfer. Extremely powerful, but it's a big stain. She had painted over it, and the Blue Star brought it out over the paint. So you could see where she tried to clean it, and then she repainted the house. So when we found it, we had this huge chunk of wall where you could see this big smudge mark and this arterial spurt. How do we preserve that? And we preserve it with a Sawzall and some 2x4s. We literally framed out that portion of the wall, and then we Sawzalled it, which is like a big saw that you can just start cutting the wall out.
Mm-hmm.
And that entire thing goes to evidence.
So I forgot if we mentioned in the episode that DJ, her Darren's son, actually said
There was a hole
what
in the
happened to the wall. Yeah, there's a hole in
This
the
is
wall.
where the hole was, and you could see where they patched it when we actually cut it off the wall there. So yeah, really interesting on how we were able to get into that. Now, I want to get into, you never know what you're going to find at a crime scene, though. Like, we come across some crazy stuff. And I left this one out of our episode, but one of the coolest things that we saw in this one that we pieced together later, we hadn't found Darren at this point. So although we had some information that maybe he was dumped in California in pieces and bits, we didn't know for sure. So we didn't want to miss the opportunity at the house. So we brought in cadaver dogs, which look for, or rather smell, more or less rotting blood or decomposing blood. That's what they're trained on. We get a hit in the backyard. Maybe that dog just hit on something else. So we bring in a second cadaver dog. We get another hit, same area. So we start digging. And when you're digging using cadaver dogs, the comments must be good. Keri's laughing. So good work, people. Go ahead.
Matt says Keri's probably the only person on the planet who gets giddy about being pelted with stuff just to see how the blood spatters.
Yeah, and I can't
say I'm giddy about it. I'm trying to become
giddy.
excited.
No, she's giddy. Stop it. Wait, there was another one just before
there
that
was about
the
luminol.
evidence of luminol. Yes,
Yeah.
You can see cleanup. So one of the really cool things is once you get that reaction, we can test it. That's where we seize the entire thing that the blood is on. That's where we had to cut the whole piece of wall out. And when we get to the lab, that's where we can start to also test for other cleaning agents. Like, is there the presence of Clorox, which is a very common one, right? Some type of bleach.
How much time are we in right now?
We are 24 minutes in.
Take a look at Matt's picture there.
Do I know Matt?
He said, it's all in the name of science, of course. I think he reached out to another YouTuber at
Oh,
some
I
point.
don't remember. Anyway, back to the dogs. We're
Yeah.
digging. When you are digging a hole and you have cadaver dogs, there's a little trick that you use. You bring new cadaver dogs in as you dig, and you let them sniff the pile of dirt that you've already dug up, and then you let them sniff the hole. And the idea is, if they start to hit on the pile of dirt, you probably already dug up whatever it is that they're hitting on. And it could be all kinds of weird things. If they still hit in the hole, you keep digging. I think we went through almost a dozen cadaver dogs. We were down about 5 feet. And we're thinking we were getting into dirt that clearly hadn't been dug up. But we couldn't figure it out. Like, we couldn't find whatever these dogs were hitting on. They just kept hitting. No matter what dogs we brought in, they all hit in the same place. And the handlers didn't know where the last dog hit. So we would keep it very clean as far as our scene goes, where we would have one handler come in, let him work the backyard. The dog would hit. And obviously there's a hole, but we didn't tell him. We never found anything. So finally we give up because we're halfway to China. So we stopped digging. And when we arrest Clarence, and we really sit down and we start going through the interview, and then Sharon later is going to come around. Obviously, we talked about her going out into the desert trying to find Darren. We bring this up with her. Well, when Darren was bleeding out in the hallway, he bled tremendously, like literally bled to death in the hallway. Well, when she went to clean that up, she was using a mop and a bucket. So she would fill the mop bucket with water and Clorox. She would mop up the mess. Pretty soon the moppy water was just blood saturated. She would dump it in the backyard, make a new bucket, mop it up, dump, mop, dump, mop, dump. The dog was hitting on where she had dumped all the mop bucket loads of water with the blood saturated. So he was hitting on the blood, but it was this soak into the yard of all this bloody water. So we thought that was kind of interesting. It was the first time I had ever come across that. So like I said, you never know what you're going to find.
Sure. And I think Bree is starring a lot of these, so we can come back and answer these if you want to jump into
we can
any of the
pause if you
start.
want.
Yeah.
Let's pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's hit some of these. Why don't you go through them?
Yeah. So
Anwar. Anwar's in the chat. All right.
Yeah.
Anwar is our other super ninja. Anwar is our creative genius that helps us pick the right words and kind of come up with the right concepts. So Anwar, I'm glad to see you're there too.
Yeah, and Lana, thank you so much for your kind donation. I really thought that maybe Sai's brother or his mom would be the ones to donate tonight, and they would be the only ones.
1999. Are you out of your mind?
So thank you, Lana. We appreciate you.
Yes, that's awesome. All right. What questions are we going on to here?
We have a lot of questions. We have someone called Not Twiz here. Have you ever done an investigation with infrared cameras?
If it's not Twiz, he goes to the top of the thing. I'll talk to him first. I'm going to put it up there. Where infrared cameras, and how do you know what color the vehicle is? Oh, well, first of all, it's probably Twiz. We're going to come back to that question. I save that one.
Hi, Swamp Rose. It's good to have you with us.
Swamp Rose is here.
Yeah.
Amino black can be used. Yes, 100%. Miss Potts, you're so smart. It absolutely can. So it's not that agent itself will detect cleanup. It's how you process the item that agent detects the presence of blood. So once you detect the presence of blood, there's a way that you can seize it and then process it in a lab where we can try to get an idea. The biggest way to do this is when you clean up blood, you get swirls typically. And when we use these types of reagents that are interacting with the blood, you'll actually see some swirl marks. And if you think about Keri lives with a caveman, by the way, and I'll try to clean our stove from time to time. And when I'm cleaning the stove, I leave these little swirls, and she does it all over for me because I can't get it right. It's kind of similar with these different reagents. Is when you spray them on there and you look at it, they'll glow. But if you look very carefully, you can see these swirl marks. And it's different than a transfer pattern or a fingerprint or this arterial spurt I was talking about. You can tell somebody tried to scrub it. So it's a good question.
Spots is such a smart cookie. We need a smart cookie, like some type of image that comes up next time for
since
super
she's
smart
on
questions.
a roll, they make a tool, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this one. There's a company out there that makes a tool. It looks like a monocular. So if you think of a binocular, but just one side, not two sides, it's a monocular. And as you look through it, you can look at houses and buildings. And if there is a camera that has any infrared capabilities, it will actually detect that camera. And then there are ways that you can sweep for electronics. It's so rare, though. That's where I'm going to do my conspiracy disclaimer.
Okay.
It's going to sound terrible. Most of law enforcement,
you want to say it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going back to our cancel culture. Most law enforcement, when they're working major crime scenes, they're struggling just to figure out what the hell they have. The idea that there's this big conspiracy that everybody has to be involved in for this to play out doesn't exist. And I hate to put it this way. Our government, for the most part, with the very, very few exceptions, is not smart enough to pull off these conspiracies. Conspiracies are typically just hidden in incompetence. Yeah, but anyway. All right, let's jump back to
First, real quick, thank you, Sherry D, for noticing our fancy studio. We appreciate it. I had a lot of fun making it. We'll talk about that in a future live.
Oh, drag marks. We'll have to throw Lan up there for just a second. Drag marks are interesting in blood because usually it's a transfer pattern. And you'll see a transfer pattern over the top of pooling, typically. So if you imagine this, you do something to me, I'm bleeding or I'm bloody, I start to bleed all over the place, I make this pool. And then if you think about dragging something through that pool, it's very obvious when you get drag marks that you can see the difference of blood that's dripping and then it gets something pulled through it. And you'll see these edges that are very natural from a dripping or pooling, but then through the middle, you'll actually see these drag marks. So
sometimes it's kind of swipe-ish looking, in my opinion.
Windex. Somebody commented Windex. Oh, look at that super. I don't know who that person is, but Susan Whitener. Thank you so much.
Mom.
Stop it, Mom. You're embarrassing me. All right, let's get back to our episode.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and we have Angel here from the UK. Thank you so much for joining us at this hour.
Angel, what time is it? Look for that. Look for her comment while I open up this next little piece we're going to get into.
Angel, what time is it?
That's legit.
Yeah. I don't know if Angel is willing to put her time, but we love that she's here.
Yeah,
so
that's got to be late.
Angel.
All right, let's get into some other things.
1:32 a.m. in the UK.
Oh, Angel.
Oh, we have a lot of UK people.
That is so cool.
People all over the world. Thank you.
You ready to get into some psychology?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to come back and we're going to hit a lot of these comments. So keep the comments coming. There's a couple things we still want to cover about this episode that I think you guys are going to find super interesting. And then Keri and Bree and Anwar are starring a handful of these comments, and we'll come back and we'll jump back into them. But let me get back into a really interesting thing that happens as we were going through the text messages on Darren's pager. And it'll take me just a minute to get this loaded up here. So
UK people do rock, and I love going to the UK. So that's true.
Well, if we got a UK here, we should probably do a quick shout out for Harsh as well.
Yeah.
He gives us a lot of love.
Yeah, Harsh does give us a lot of love and support, and I love his impartiality and view on things. So if you guys don't watch his show,
Deborah.
I enjoy the way he presents content.
Legit. Look at Deborah.
Oh, Deborah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Hey, Deborah, at the end of the show, in fact, I'll do it right now. I'm going to throw this up. Write that down. Please send me an email with some of your contact info. You know, some of our bigger supers here, we have this really cool little thing that Bree made.
Oh, yeah.
Our Socialite Crime Club special token. It's a secret token. We're going to send that to you. So please hit me up with that email. I'll leave that up for a while. And I want to send you something. All right, let's get into some psychology here. Check this out. This is a text message that came from Darren's pager the night he went missing. Oh.
Thank you too much, Mom.
Oh, we're getting all kinds now.
Yeah.
Same thing. All right, if it's over 20, make sure you send me an email, please. Don't forget. All right, let me get in here. Okay, when you can't put stuff on the screen because all the supers are coming through.
Yeah, it's a good night.
Yeah, we're going to be able to buy you some new hair products. Okay, this is from Darren. It's on his pager, and Glenn is his boss. You're going to see Glenn come up here in a minute. And Glenn sent Darren a text message earlier in the night on his pager saying, "Hey, are you in tonight, Glenn?" And Darren responds, "I'm sick as hell. Feels like food poisoning misspelled. Going to the ER, D." And he just signs D. And then maybe 15 minutes or so after that, he sends another message. "I will bring slip from ER. I'm sorry, been throwing up last hour. D." Then Glenn, that boss, I bet Glenn feels like a jerk now, but he was like, "You're expected to call her Paige. Damn it, why didn't you call us before she killed you?" So yeah, poor Glenn has no idea what's happening.
This is why you, as a supervisor, don't just get mad at somebody.
Yeah. You find out later that nasty text was to your dead employee
for not coming into work. At least send a, "Hey, I hope you're okay. Is there anything we can do to help?"
Oh, somebody just claimed the bat wing. Yeah, there's a backstory there we'll get to here in a little bit. We'll come back to that one.
Thank you, Sev. That was really sweet.
Vicky has these tamales. This always made me laugh, and this is part of that dark humor that I decided we'd share on the lives. I'm going through these text messages, right, and they're super deep, and I'm starting to see a pattern I'm about to discuss, and I'm going back and forth, and then all of a sudden, Vicky shows up in Darren's text messages. And her first one is like, "Hey, Darren, did you have a good weekend?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, he did not have a good weekend." And then her very next one was, "Hey, I've got your tamales." And I'm thinking, oh, poor Darren. He's not even going to get his tamales before he gets there. So we have Glenn hitting him up on, "Hey, you're supposed to page or call. You didn't. His tamales." And then notice the time, about 3 a.m. This is a good test question for our socialites that watch this week's episode. If you remember the whoop-de-woos and the pager registering to the network, disconnecting, going to California, coming back, registering, disconnecting, just before the payphone call in downtown Phoenix, we're hitting 2:58 in the morning, almost 3 a.m., we get another message. "Glenn just left the ER. I have what's supposed to be stomach. It's misspelled. Flu. They recommend 4 days of rest and antibiotics. Sorry. We'll give you a slip when I come in. Darren."
I love the psychology behind this. So we have had some comments of, "Hey, get more into the psychology of criminals and how that works." So here's some interesting and fun information that we can bring to you that you might enjoy.
Yeah, so this caught my attention immediately. And I used to really get into written statements and the way people say things. So for example, there's what's known as a social introduction. And our socialites can use this at home. I'm going to give you 2 tips tonight. The second one is really weird, but the first one, this is kind of fun. If somebody ever starts talking about somebody else that they've never talked about before, and they don't throw in a natural social introduction. So for example, Keri actually noted earlier, we are husband and wife. But if I go to a bar and I'm hanging out with somebody and maybe I just met them and I start talking about my life, and then I just start talking about Keri, and I only say Keri. I never say, "Oh, Keri, it's my wife." There's a problem. So that's what we refer to as a social introduction. So if you ever listen to somebody who's just talking or rambling and carrying on and on and on, and they bring up a new name that you would have no idea who that person is, and they don't provide you a social introduction to who that person is, it's usually a red flag. There's some type of tension or issue or problem there. The other one is anytime you ask somebody, "Hey, what'd you do today?" And they start with, I woke up, I brushed my teeth.
They give you a whole description of their entire day, like a journal.
Yeah, but it's the brushing the teeth. I can't, this is not scientific, by the way. I saw a scientific thing. This is not scientific. I've had those on a handful of written statements. It almost always leads to some type of a sexual issue. Always included
That
there.
they brush their teeth?
If you dig into what happened to that person the last 24 hours, there's always some type of a sexual incident. In my history, there's no science behind that. I'm just saying. So
it's just a cleaner thing to do after sex is to brush your teeth.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no science. We're moving on. Anyway, in this particular one, what we get is we get a handful of messages.
Thank you, Angel, so much. Be sure to email Cy at his email and the ticker there.
That's so cool.
Thank you so much, Angel. That was very kind of you.
I'm going to throw this one up there. Remember we had D? Mm-hmm. By the way, Darren always signed his text messages Darren. He never used D. So between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., when the pager had service, all the text messages were signed D. Then all of a sudden at 3 a.m. or just coming into 3 a.m., all of a sudden we got a switch, and now they're coming in as Darren. So somebody's actually typing Darren, and this immediately catches my attention. There's a very formal thing that happens when you cut your husband into pieces and you cut his head off and you do these horrible things.
Yeah, but imagine so.
Yeah, I'm glad you're imagining and not telling me that you know so. So the idea here is nicknames go away in formal situations. So before Darren was chopped up into little pieces and this terrible thing happened out in the California desert, we know Sharon used to refer to Darren as D a lot. So these text messages that are being sent from Sharon, we know that now. And she's signing them D, because it's a cutesy little nickname. That's what she always refers to him from. It's just D. Mm-hmm. He's never done it before, so we know it's Sharon. However, when she's coming back from California, getting into Phoenix, and now she's cut him up into all these pieces and he's spread out all over California, he's no longer D because he's dead. It's very formal. He's cut up. He's Darren. And she didn't even realize
she views him in a different way now. He's not all there, so the name gets shortened too.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So that was another thing we were getting long on the episode as it was, but I wanted to get into the psychology a little bit that a lot of times suspects will do that, especially in high stress situations. You can actually see the use of past tense as well, where the wife is missing. The husband is talking about how much he used to love her. Yeah, I really loved her. And I've actually seen some of these comments pop up. So it's really interesting. It
reminds me of when I would get mad at my kids because they would do something that just stressed me out. And I would call them by their first and middle name.
Oh, yeah. I think everybody experiences that.
Yeah, that's a little bit what it's like, though. I think when a criminal does something that they actually go in and change the name of the formality in a way of the person that they're referring to.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Murky Pig threw up here that she's distancing herself mentally without even knowing it. Yeah.
Yes,
it's completely subconscious behavior. And it's really important on the investigative side to catch those subconscious behaviors because that will formalize your timeline faster than anything. And we see it in text messages and phone calls all the time. The phone will always reveal that. So kind of interesting. Yeah. With that, I want to throw up another picture that we have here that we didn't get too far into. Some of you will remember this. You're enjoying the comments.
Heavy Metal Rehab said, I'm 44 and my dad still does that.
Does what?
Probably refers to her by her first and middle name.
First and last name. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
It happens. There's probably a story behind there. If you want to talk later, let us know. We'll diagnose what's going on there. I wanted to get into a little bit of the pattern because, again, this is one of the things we left out of the episode. And I felt like it was just starting to pull away, and I didn't want people to get too distracted from what we were really trying to focus on at this point. But it was the number of calls and the amount of time these conversations were taken. We saw a big peak when Sharon was served the order of protection. And I want to come back and touch on this with this episode. We really drilled into Aubrey in the interview about this and not telling him that we knew when she got served the order of protection, the calls peaked and the length of calls peaked. But we knew that there was this huge increase. So when we interviewed Aubrey without disclosing what we knew from the cell phones, we worked that into our interview to just hit Aubrey like, hey, did you know about this order of protection? And he acknowledged it. Yeah, I knew. And then we asked him, well, we have information that she was really leaning on you during that time and that she was in contact with you a lot and that you were really helping her out. And we're really interested in what you were doing, Aubrey, because there's a piece there that we're still trying to piece together. And he thought we knew way more than we did. And he admits right after she drove away from the house, she called him and wanted to know if he could get her a gun.
Oh.
And he just absolutely refused to do it because I think he knew where that was headed. And he never did. And we have zero evidence that she ever got the gun. But it was really interesting in the course of the investigation when we saw those phone records and we saw that spike, we could tie it to this conversation of she's trying to get a gun now. And then, of course, what we like to do on the investigative side is when we see that, okay, when did you tell her no? go back to the phone records. Who does she call next? Who does she call after that? Who does she call after that? Because she's not going to stop just because Aubrey says no. And sure enough, we figure out there is a handful of other people.
Who do you know who she tried to reach out to next to get a gun?
I believe Mr. Lemons was in that group as well.
Oh. And he knew that this was no good either.
Yeah, he was like, hey, I'll still have sex with you and get tied to the bed and you can inject all kinds of nonsense, but I'm not going to give you a gun. He drew the line.
Did he give her the axe and the saw?
I don't know. We
you
never
can come
tracked
look
that
through my
down.
garage.
Yeah, but kind of interesting with that one. Oh, we need to make a correction. I've got that on my list of to-dos here. Let me jump over to another banner.
So we mentioned the VA in Tucson, and I'm really glad that somebody caught this because I don't think really ever completed his statement. He said there was no VA in Tucson, so Aubrey Muncie went to Phoenix to go to the VA. So it made it sound like there's absolutely no location of a VA in Tucson when there is a VA in Tucson that it's at Brittany Hedgepeth 9848 brought up. It's been there since 1928.
It's been there a while.
Apparently Aubrey had some health issues going on that he couldn't be treated for in Tucson.
Yeah, he was seeing a specialist within the VA, and only that specialist was providing services in Phoenix. So he was being seen on a regular basis in the Tucson VA, but he was having to drive to Phoenix every 2 weeks for the specialist. So good catch on that. And we needed to make sure that we correct that.
Yes. Thank you, Brittany.
Yeah, really, really good on that one. All right, let's throw in our last funny stories, and then we're going to start jumping into all the Q&As, and we'll see how many of these questions we can tackle.
Okay.
So we're serving the search warrant at Gary Franklin's house. And if you all remember, this is the place where the burn piles. And then we had the shovel with where they buried the poor dog the week before and just left everything there. The funeral was over. Our chief at the time, who I absolutely loved, Tim Dorn, he was also a lieutenant colonel in the National Guard. So he's really high up in the National Guard. And he was on drill that same week down at Fort Huachuca, which is maybe 30 miles away. He's the type of guy that he was very much in the trenches with his boys type thing. If he knew we were out working.
And girls.
Well, it's just a statement. Yeah.
He came out a lot, like at night.
He
when
pulled
I was
traffic
on duty.
stops. Like, it's not unusual at 2 a.m. to hear the chief pulling over somebody and just doing a traffic stop.
I mentioned in another episode that he would just pop up on one of my calls in the middle of the night because I don't know if he just couldn't sleep or what. So he'd just go out and
involved.
Hang out with us.
So he hears that we're down in the desert, just digging up these ashes in the middle of the summer, hot. It's just terrible work. And he shows up, rolls up his sleeve. He's in his fatigues. He's in his National Guard uniform, takes off his top. He's just got his t-shirt on and just gets to work with us out there sweating. He also is very much a horseman.
An equestrian lover.
Yeah, I don't know about equestrian, but definitely horses.
Yeah.
Equestrian's too formal. Sounds very British.
But
definitely,
we have Brits on with us.
But definitely a horse guy. And they had this mangy old horse in the pasture right next to Gary's trailer. And as we're wrapping up the scene, the sun's going down. It's out in the American West, the Arizona desert, right? So we've got this beautiful sunset. And he and I are kind of running through the case, and it's just the two of us at this point. And he's asked me like, all right, where are we going from here? What else do you guys need to do? What do you need help with? And this white, mangy, nasty horse starts working its way over to him and I, and we're standing right by this barbed wire fence. And pretty soon the horse is now where you can touch him. And the chief starting to like just pet his jawline right here around his cheekbones. Yeah. And all of a sudden that horse turns and bites the chief right on the shoulder right here, like bites him without missing a beat. Chief right hooks him at the same time. Did you see Conan back in the day when Conan punched the camel?
Yeah.
It was very similar to that. And the horse takes off. And I just remember thinking, Chief, did you just punch a horse?
Yeah.
So little things you don't typically get to see your chief do.
They're actually pretty strong animals.
So is Chief. And Chief is a little guy. He's like maybe.
I think he was about my height.
No, he was taller than
maybe
you.
A little bit taller.
No, he was not. He wasn't a fidget. Okay. Let's jump over to our Q&A. Let's see what we got going on here. Let me jump into the comments. Oh, there's a lot of comments in there.
We do have a lot of questions here.
Okay, keep them coming. I'm going to start working through these. Let's see. I love the beanies and the
Thank you,
backpacks.
Sherry D. We have had a handful of comments about our studio. And like I said, we'll do an episode of how we created our studio, the technology that we're using. Sai's actually going to create an entire live episode or something about the technology that we use within our studio, how we have it set up, as well as we'll talk about our background and the creativity that went into creating the set as well.
Yeah, we're going to get into a full episode. It won't be one of our normal ones, so don't worry, everybody. You're not going to get your Wednesday dump replaced with this. But we spent a lot of time and effort recently, and some of you, this is going to be really interesting. This is a new studio. We switched studios about a week ago. Some of the more recent episodes, the last 2 episodes you've seen, are in our new studio. So hopefully you didn't notice much of a difference, but we are going to do an in-depth how we set the whole thing up, the technology we're using. We've got some really cool things coming in the future too, that we want to be able to recreate some things in here. So yeah, good comment there.
Hey, we have somebody asked, what happened to the Chief's shoulder? Did he have a scar?
I think he just had a bruise.
If
Chief's
he did,
tough.
he'd probably never.
He wouldn't.
admit to it.
Chief is super tough. He's a tough dude.
Angel, yes, I remember you're Brit, and I hope you're doing well.
Can law enforcement use devices to block the use of electronics? Yes. If they do they need a warrant? Yes. So there is a number of different devices that can be used. And when I say a warrant, I need to clarify. Anytime I say a warrant, either on one of our episodes or here, there's also what's known as exigency. And exigency is people are dying or people may die. And the length of time it takes me to get a search warrant, somebody might die. So I can do it without a warrant under exigency, but then I replace the warrant later on. The other problem that you have that people probably don't consider is when you start messing around with people's electronics, you can't control the number of people. You can only control the space. Well, grandpa has a heart attack and grandma tries to call 911 and we're jamming communications. That's a real problem. So you have to make sure that when you do this, you have ways that you can actually let 911 calls come through and little things like that. So yes, it's possible. I will also tell you it's very, very rare. The equipment that it takes to do that, just to get started, $1 million, $1.5 million to really be proficient at it.
Unless you're ordering cheap stuff out of Asia or something.
It doesn't work anyway.
Illegally.
So I make sure to take Keri on a date. Oh, just took her on a date.
He takes me on dates all the time. So as a matter of fact, we were going to go on a date last night and then I got tired.
We both did.
Yeah. So we stayed in.
This is a great question. Chris, are cell phone records going to change once the adoption of satellite connectivity becomes widespread? Great question. I know AT&T and Verizon have already signed up, or with a partner, have already partnered with satellite communications companies. I know Elon Musk is testing a phone right now that works with Starlink. And the answer is yes, 100%. It'll never be perfect. So cell towers aren't going away anytime soon. But for a satellite to work, it requires GPS, solid GPS. So what's going to be nice with the satellite connectivity is I expect we're going to see 3-meter accuracy of where the phone is during those communications. If you want to hide your location, satellite communication is not the way to go. So it'll be interesting. Now, yeah, can you use VPNs, can you use these other things? Sure, that's going to mask where you're at if we're looking at it from the browsing side. But your phone still has to connect to the satellite, and that satellite side of the house is still going to have what I suspect is going to be very, very good accuracy. So it'll be nice.
Yeah. Somebody's asking, we have KB asking, do we think Lemons is just being a guy, or was he perma-manipulated?
Oh, I don't know how to answer that in a PG-13 way without maybe offending people.
Maybe try to use more technical terms of, are you thinking sexuality or something?
I just think he was sexually manipulated because guys are dumb.
I think it's quite easy for men to be sexually manipulated. Because
we're stupid.
Well, a lot of the cases that we've seen and even discussed, there is a lot of sexual manipulation that takes place before men are killed. Yeah, so it is interesting.
Yeah, and men are dumb. What are you sipping on, Keri?
So Sai got me a red wine this evening. Thank you for asking. I'm not sure what kind you got.
This is a nice Merlot out of Argentina.
It is nice. Yeah, so I have a good red wine. Thank you.
Does law enforcement, cops, FBI, DEA, etc., have to identify themselves? No. Especially if I'm buying something illegal from you. Hey, I'm the cops. Can you sell me your rocket launcher? Yeah, so it really depends on the situation. Oh, see, I'm going to put this up here just so I can take a quick stab at this, and we're going to move on. No. I am not going to get involved in the Delphi case. There's a number of reasons I'm not going to get involved in the Delphi case. I won't say that I'm involved or connected to the Delphi case, but there's reasons that I cannot touch the Delphi case. And one of these days, I'll get it out there. Oh.
OCD Shaggy, thank you so much for your contribution to Socialite Crime Club.
We do OCD Shaggy. You got to know, we also we have what we refer to as the Shaggy defense. Wasn't me. Most satisfying case you both have worked on. Go.
Oh, gosh. I would say a lot of our cases during our time at ZX were really satisfying because we were able to work with a lot of law enforcement agencies around the company, or around the country, while we had our company. And we made a lot of great friends, I think, which was sometimes more satisfying than working the case. And I say that's why I'm not naming a particular case, but I think it was really satisfying making friends from agencies, not only across the country, but around the world.
For me, it's the rescues. I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of homicides, if not well over 1,000 at this point. And whenever we can get into cases that we actually can get ahead of this and people were going to die and we end up doing a rescue, we've got a couple of them that come to mind. We already did Kayla Brown with the Amazon review killer a couple weeks ago. We've got next week's episode.
Spider and the Fly.
Oh, wait, we're recording it next week.
Yeah,
it won't come out until September, but keep an eye on that one, Spider and the Fly. I think that one involves I won't get into too many details, a young female who was abducted through online grooming, and she was going to be sex trafficked. At least that's what we were later told. And we completely affected the rescue of her out of this nasty little mobile home that they had taken her to. So for me, it's the cases that we were able to actually get out ahead of this and affect some type of rescue. So kind of a big deal with that.
Yeah.
Say something good, Keri, while I dig through some of these to bring up another one.
Let's see. I'll say something good. Oh, Sherry D, we just got $24.90 from her. Thank you so much. Please send Sai your
secret tokens and hair
email.
products. Yeah, make sure, Sherry, you hit me up, please, for that email.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I love this. Chris, should law enforcement have to receive a 4-year degree or beyond to be qualified to be hired? No. You absolutely should not. I am a big proponent. Your work product should speak for itself, not your resume. I think I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again. And Chris, I don't know if you know this. I have an associate's degree. On that associate's degree, I've got 20 plus years in law enforcement, another 10 years after that, building a company that we sold to a major corporation for millions and millions of dollars. It has been used thousands of times. It's mapped a couple billion calls. I don't know how many cases we've impacted, the actual arrests we've made, people we've saved, bodies we've found. I still don't have a bachelor's degree. I'm not going to get one at this point because I just don't care anymore. Now, I also understand that's not the average bear, but at the same time, I think that we have a society today that relies way too much on a college degree. And I'm going to pick on Keri here for just a second because Keri does have a college degree.
Mm-hmm.
And when you became a police officer, what exactly did you refer to or rely on from your college degree to help you as a police officer?
Well, funny enough, I had a degree in justice studies. I also had a degree in, a minor in English literature, which I just loved that because I've always loved writing as well. But not much from my degree helped me because I think when they go through the process of hiring police officers, especially depending on where you are in the country, the type of community you live in, I think it's really important to select people who have life experience and life experience that is somewhat similar to the people that they're going to be interacting with in that community. If you're in a very hardcore neighborhood somewhere in Chicago or Baltimore, I think it's important that law enforcement agencies hire people who have life experience and an understanding of the people in those communities. If you're working in South Phoenix, it's important that you understand that you may go to a call where you're going to have to change the way you speak to interact and engage with people in a way that they're going to understand you. I couldn't interact with some people in our community in the way that you hear me speak on camera. My language would have to evolve to meet educational levels as well as
Throw down. Give the audience an example.
as well as just the way
I've heard
people
this language.
culturally spoke so that I could connect with them. And I don't think a lot of average citizens understand that police officers have to go through and change their patterns of behavior consistently throughout a shift so that they can connect with people that they're interacting with in the community.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about religion here for just a second. I'm not picking on any particular religion here. In fact, I still know this guy today, and he's a great person. But a really good example to your point, he went to high school. As soon as he got out of high school, he went on a mission. When he got back from his mission, he went to what I would consider in that particular religion a very prestigious 4-year college. And he obtained his bachelor's degree. Then he decided he wanted to be a cop, came back and got hired. During his field training, it was discovered he didn't know what beer smelled like. And I remember being at a party when he was in his field training, and his field training officer figured out, how did you not smell that? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, you don't smell the presence of alcohol? And the kid's like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they seized all the beer from that party, and they made him go and pour each can out and all the bottles out so he could smell each can, because he just didn't have the life experience. Super smart kid. I think he was an Eagle Scout. So, I mean, he very responsible, very squared away, somebody I would trust, with my family, my kids, like very dependable, trustable kid. But those life experiences just were really lacking.
Right. And they do try to cover things like that in the academy, but obviously you can't cover everything. So they'll make sure you know what weed smells like. They'll make sure you know what certain types of drugs look like and things like that. But like I said, you can't cover everything.
Yeah.
So life experience does matter.
Yeah. Mary Holt. If someone deletes messages from iPhone, will they automatically delete from the watch? Or is that a separate setup? It's a great question. It depends on how you are storing and sending your information. There's a bunch of features within iCloud, so there is no black and white answer to that. It depends on how often you're going up and updating that, how often you're changing that. We can see the messages being delivered a lot of times, but we may not see the content depending on how you're storing and saving that. If you have your iCloud fully engaged on everything, yes, even if you delete it, there's ways that can be recovered.
Mm-hmm. We have Latina 2010.
Oh.
It's a very sexy screen name. Do you take continuing education classes to keep updated on all the electronics, new and old? Ooh, sexy and smart.
I love this question. Yes. But a lot of times we find ourselves creating those classes. When we get into a lot of the methodologies and the technology that we're dealing with on a daily basis, this was my struggle as a cop. I couldn't find training that was providing the know-how that I needed. And I started figuring out on my own. I started offering training. Those training classes have blown up. In fact, we have one of the instructors who's on tonight. But that class has blown up into a bunch of other classes. They have their own classes. In fact, they just developed what I would consider probably one of the premier drive test classes in the nation right now. And so as far as being able to take them, it's hard to find those classes. So what we do is we would work with the actual manufacturer. So in this case, there's a company called Roden Schwarz. They're over in Munich. I've drugged Keri across the pond a handful of times to go to Munich, and we sit down with their engineers and we learn from the engineers, but we're learning it in a very sterile environment, engineer world. And then we come back and we modify that to the field so that cops can understand it. And then we will create those classes. So yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times I have found, at least in my specific specialty, if you will, we've developed a lot of the training that actually is out there for law enforcement now.
Well, the training and the marketing for law enforcement, because it is a very difficult technology to begin understanding from a training level, for one, but then to teach it to law enforcement so that they understand it in a meaningful way, that when they use it, they create an investigation and they're going through trial, helping them figure out ways to help juries understand what that technology means and how it was used to solve a case can be very challenging.
Yeah. Jessica Silva, I want to know about Faraday bags and phones. Have you come across a case of someone using a Faraday bag? So a Faraday bag, if you guys aren't familiar, think of a big pocket of tinfoil that I put my phone in, and it prevents any transmissions.
What was that movie where all the kids were wearing tinfoil hats? It had, I think, Joaquin Phoenix in it. Was it Signs, the movie?
Oh, yeah. So it's like putting a tinfoil hat. Yes, I've seen those a handful of times. The thing about Faraday bags that a lot of people need to understand is when I put my phone in a Faraday bag, it's no longer a phone. Like, I can't communicate. I can't use it. Yeah, it's not tracking, but I'm not using it. Probably more importantly is what we see happens when we start making arrests and people trying to put a phone in a Faraday bag or erasing the phone. So yes, I've run across a handful of cases where somebody, after arrests started being made and they didn't want to be tracked, they would do that. But contrary to popular belief, just turn your phone off. If your phone is off, it's off, people. Nobody's tracking your phone. I know there's going to be a lot of people that, nope, they can track it. Yeah, you're right. There's probably ways that they can track it, but don't flatter yourself. You're not that big of a criminal yet. You're going to have to take down part of a nation.
And guess what? You're going to turn it back on. Yeah. And you're going to call your mom.
Because everybody calls their mom.
Everybody calls their mom after they did something bad.
Oh, wait. How do I get hired and trained?
I'm not and don't want to be law enforcement. TYSM. Get some Multiplicino. Oh, I love Multiplicino. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, Miss Potts, you're going to have to hire for what? Throw me in. I'm going to hit a couple others and I'll come back to you. Yeah. Lana, supplemental report in a murder case. Is it possible to change the report after the fact, or is everything programmed with timestamps and dates? Can you get in the back end? Yes. Now, I'm going to tell you best practice. I'm not telling you what you're going to see across the board, because there are agencies out there that still do things very, very backwards. In a perfect scenario, there's what we call there's CAD dispatch, and then there's RMS, which is the report management system. In the RMS systems that most agencies, most legitimate accredited agencies use, when I type my narrative, I get to a point where I can submit it, or my supplement, I can submit it. When I hit the submit button, it's a timestamp. It then goes to my supervisor, who can make comments, edit it. And when I say edit it, supervisors read reports every day that are just lacking certain details. And you got to remember, I'm out on my shift. I catch 10 cases that day, or 10 reports. And at the end of the day, I'm sitting there trying to type them, and I'm just trying to get them so I can go home. I might miss details because we're all human. So the supervisor can review them and be like, hey, you need to expand on this. You need to add this, and it'll get kicked back. That review and that kickback is timestamped. I make my edits, I send it back, and it could go back and forth for a while till I get it right. But all of that is captured. And then when my supervisor signs off on it, that's when it becomes the official record, and that is signed off on it. So yes, to answer your question, on a real agency accredited with a process in place, you should be able to review that approval process. Now, there's going to be certain discovery things that come in where some people might say, hey, it's work product up to the point that it gets approved and it's not subject to discovery, but there is a paper trail there. And when I'm saying the work product, you may not be able to see all of the changes that were made, but you can see that it went through a process. But once it's finalized, unless there's some nefarious things happening in the background, you shouldn't see that. Like I've screwed this up, where I wrote a supplement, and I actually was writing a supplement about one case, and it was involved in another case, and I just confused the two. My supervisor didn't catch it. And then like a week later, I'm like, oh, crap. I'm talking about the wrong damn witness. That's a whole different case. So I had to write an additional supplement to correct that supplement. So there should always be a paper trail.
It's kind of like a contractual addendum. So whenever you're doing anything, you should always be documenting everything that you're doing. If you make a phone call, if you leave a message for somebody, you document the date, the time, what you said, if they answered, if you had to leave a voicemail, it should always be documented.
Terry, good to see you there, Terry. Is it possible to chip or something kids can wear, especially in the autistic community? Keri, number one, make sure you are tuning in, or not Keri, Terry, for Spider and the Fly. We have some really cool stuff we're going to get into with Spider and the Fly as it comes to human trafficking, more importantly, child sexual predator online behavior and protecting our children. That's going to be a really good episode. We're actually really excited. Keri and I are putting the final touches on it now. So Spider and the Fly is going to answer some of those. But man, don't underestimate the, what's the iTag?
Yeah, the little tags, little white tags from...
You can put those in everything. I've even seen kids' shoes now that have a cutout in the sole. You pull the sole up and you can put the iTag in the sole and put it back down. So.
Or in hair ties, the little scrunchies.
Yeah.
For girls, I guess boys could use them now too. They have longer hair now, but I've seen people tucking them inside scrunchies so that when their kids go to school and they have their hair up, the little tag, the locator, is there with them as well.
All right, Jeff.
Can you explain what you meant by reserve the right to change my mind when all the data comes out? Or is that an off-limits question? We aren't answering any questions about that case.
I like my freedom. And, I do want to make this comment because we addressed this in one of our episodes coming up. There's some people talking online, or at least I won't say people. There's a person that did a episode with some other channel a while back. And this person was talking specifically about evidence he reviewed on a particular case and his opinions on that evidence and his thoughts towards me and maybe where I was wrong or right. I'll leave it out for whoever to judge that. I want to take Jeff's question here to answer a little question and explain something to our listeners and to anybody on here right now. When there is a gag order put in place and somebody goes into a public venue and they're talking about evidence that is restricted by a gag order, there's one of two things happening. They're either lying or they're committing a crime. If I go on YouTube and I start talking about a certain case that has a gag order that is technically a court order that is enforceable by my arrest, I'm in trouble. Or I'm just making things up.
Well, if you're talking about evidence in that case and particular details that have
which this individual was.
Yeah.
So I think for the general community in regards to that case, it's not because I want Jeff. Trust me, there's going to be a day I'm going to talk, and I'm going to talk a lot. We're just not there. But more importantly, unless another person has been arrested in the last week or two and I'm not aware of it, I would say he was probably lying because they would shut that down immediately. So I don't want to jump on that bandwagon. I understand the question, Jeff. I think it's a great question, and it will get answered. I promise. Just give me a little bit of time.
From Nikki, birthday girl. Does it piss you off when certain people say your work is junk science?
No, Nikki, it doesn't. I love it when people call my work junk science because it automatically filters what they know about what it is that we're even talking about. U.S. versus Carpenter. What U.S. versus Carpenter is, it's a landmark case in the United States, and it's from the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court justices came together and they looked at cell phone data, cell phone records, location records, and they came to a conclusion. It is so accurate. It provides such breadcrumb-like trails on citizens and individuals, and it intrudes into your privacy and your day-to-day life that law enforcement has to have a search warrant to get it. It's that intrusive. It's the same thing as looking in your underwear drawer. So when I see people who say, hey, this is junk science, it's interesting it's junk science because in the same breath, they'll ask, well, did you have a search warrant? Well, if it's junk science, what does it matter? I don't need a search warrant because it's junk science. It's not junk science. It's been looked at by the court. And the bigger piece, and if anybody's been watching our episode for a while, you'll start to see a kind of a common theme. I have lost count on the number of bodies, pieces of evidence, cases where we've taken this junk science and we've directed people, or we directly ourselves found evidence, people, live, dead, evidence, phones, murder weapons. I've got a number of cases that we've eliminated people who were thought to have committed a crime who didn't commit the crime. So it works both ways. So yeah, I kind of enjoy.
Gave a thumbs up.
Oh, I kind of enjoy when I see that, because it automatically lets me know they don't have a real talking point. So they're just throwing out this junk science, and it's kind of absurd.
Deborah, I'm glad to hear that you loved sturgeon, our sturgeon case, or counterfeit caviar, because I really didn't know that people were going to enjoy that case at all. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. Thank you for commenting on that.
I think we might have another poached case coming up with narwhals. You want to talk about that, Keri?
Yeah, we have a poached case coming up with narwhals. I don't know that we actually have it on the schedule yet, but that'll be fun when we do. Keri, I understand your discomfort, but I really enjoyed kicking it with Keri. Will there be more?
Oh, KB, yes, finally. KB, you're my best friend right now. Yeah, Keri's there going to be more kicking it with Keri's?
There will. We actually had one recorded. It's in a sense being held hostage right now. So we're going to have to re-record it and create some more content around that. Maybe that's something we'll talk about later on in a different episode, but we have some attorneys involved with that whole situation right now. So we'll talk about that later. But yes, there will be some more kicking it with Keri's. We're looking at also making it a members access content. So we're not sure yet what we're going to do with that, but thank you for asking.
Yeah, we're going to have fun with kicking with Keri's. We have all kinds of things. How much psychology training does law enforcement get in their training? I would say initial training, very limited. Depending on what field you go into from there, it can really grow. I went through some pretty extensive training in interviewing children. I got certified to do forensic interviewing of children, which you get into a lot of the child psychology. And then when you get into more of your interviewing, interrogation techniques and tactics, you get into a lot of human psychology. There's a class people can check out. It was LSI, so Lincoln Sam Ida, LSI scan. You can Google it. Avenome Spear was the instructor, but it really got into human psychology of how you structure sentences, how you speak, how you write. Super interesting. His work is, he was an Israeli guy. I think he was like an Israeli spy for a while. So kind of a crazy story, but super interesting stuff. So it really depends on what your specialty is in law enforcement. That's one of the cool things about law enforcement, right? You can specialize in completely different things.
And eventually you find a niche in law enforcement of something that you're just constantly working on that you become good at, or something that you just happen to take an interest in, that you invest a lot of your time and training and your own funds into so that you become better at it. And it's such a vast array of potential opportunity to create a niche for yourself there.
Yeah. Ulysses, what are the red flags for an applicant during a law enforcement interview? I've got a great story for this one. Number one is lying. When I first went through the process to become a police officer, the last thing I had to do before I went to the police academy was a polygraph. And I came down to the Phoenix area. I did my polygraph. I finished the polygraph, and the polygrapher actually told me, you failed. You failed miserably. I'm seeing some drug history here, possibly transporting of drugs that I'm detecting some deception on. And I was a super straight-laced, super clean kid back then. And I'm thinking, I haven't even done drugs, let alone transport drugs. And then he said there was something sexually that I was really nervous about. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, well, it's Friday. And they'd purposely scheduled this on Friday, just so everybody's tracking. It's Friday, it's late. It's probably going to take me till Monday afternoon to finish my report. Tell you what, here's my business card. If you think of anything that you forgot or that you left out, call me Monday morning and I can fix it before I put it in my report. But just take the weekend to think. So I go home and I'm thinking, I'm not going to get this job. I'm not lying. This polygraph is a bunch of crap. And I'm super pissed off. And Monday morning, instead of calling him, I go to the police department and I sit down with my sergeant. I explained to him, hey, I'm pretty sure this dude's going to call you this afternoon and tell you that I failed my polygraph and I don't know what to say. So I guess I'm out. Like, this seems like BS because I know I'm not lying about it. And he starts laughing. He's like, nah, he does that to everybody. They were just testing you because a lot of people, you'd be surprised, they get about Sunday and they call the guy back and they start admitting all this stuff that they left out of their polygraph. And that's how they detect if you're lying. And I thought, well, that is not, I was convinced I was never going to be a cop. So,
and there are people who can beat a polygraph. So it's an interesting
not a
thing to
21-year-old
consider.
dumb kid like myself.
Before we get to the question that's on the screen, Crystal C, come to Oklahoma, you'll smell weed immediately. We believe that. We have a case coming up. It's this
Penny for your
week's case.
thoughts.
Penny for your thoughts.
Yeah, it's this week's case.
And that case is actually based on some victims out of Oklahoma. So we hope you enjoy that.
Proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. We actually even get into a little Merle Haggard for that case.
No, we have a question on the screen. Is there a way
no, I'm trying to read the screen name. Don't be hating.
Don't be hating.
Oh.
Yeah, how can you hate a puppy like that on the screen? You can't. Is there a way you recommend police or even us as watchers try to stay unbiased when following a case?
That is great.
This question. Great. Go ahead.
I almost screwed up right there. I almost said things I wasn't supposed to say. Yeah, stay tuned. I think we are going to give a really good example of that as the year plays out. But always know there's two sides. Always know there is the methodologies and making sure that the methodologies are done properly. And then there's opinions. And they may not be the same. Just because somebody is involved in doing a methodology doesn't mean they're thinking yay or nay as far as a crime was committed. Being unbiased is going through the entire court case and allowing the jury to make a decision. And I think that's what I would throw out there is until all the evidence comes out and everything is out, you don't know if somebody's innocent or guilty. You just don't, because you don't have the full picture. And I've seen cases where I was sold that somebody was absolutely guilty. And then I saw one thing and I thought, oh, they're innocent. And I've been sold somebody was absolutely innocent. And then I saw one thing and I thought, oh, that's not good. Yeah. So I think until you see all the evidence and you see the big picture, just be careful because there's usually a lot more to come.
I also think that remaining emotionally detached from a case is a really good way to remain unbiased. If you remain emotionally detached and you're not getting what we called emotionally hijacked, we've mentioned this on Tommy Jude's live. When you become emotionally attached and you get emotionally hijacked in a case, this is when you start finding yourself with biases of what you're looking at and you don't allow yourself to stick to facts. Yeah.
And I think I'm going to hit Lana really quick because she's got a whole bunch of stuff about Karen Reed. Ooh, Karen Reed, there's so much there. I think it just goes back to Karen Reed, guilty or innocent. And I want to hit this on a couple of things because of the bias piece. I think Karen Reed is guilty. Do I think Karen Reed is guilty of everything she was charged with? No. Is she guilty of something? Yeah, it's in there. Like, she ain't innocent. Are there a lot of other people that are guilty on that case? Probably so. And the only reason I'm throwing that one out, and I'm going to move on because I don't want to get too far into Karen Reed. I think we're going to have an episode coming up on that. I think there's a lot of biases on both sides with the Karen Reed case, and it's not clean. I think everybody who touched that case has a little bit of guilty going on. So there's just a lot of issues that come into that. And then wiretapping a husband and wife calls, is that a violation of privileges? No, it's not, because typically the search warrant will actually cover that. If you and your wife are both committing the crime, then you both go to jail. So there's no protection of running a criminal operation just because you're married. What else we got going on?
Let's go back.
Oh, Miss Potts. If incorrect, inaccurate CAS data used to obtain a search warrant or arrest, is that grounds for a Franks? Huh. Stay tuned. think someone asked
Sorry,
this,
Miss
but do
Potts.
y'all have training for civilians? Oh, yeah, training for civilians.
Pretty much every episode is a civilian training, I think.
So here's where the problem comes in. You have to be a defense expert who is active in the field to come to one of our trainings. And even then, we've had to limit them some ways. And the reason for that is the data that we're typically working with, you only get through a search warrant. So the data typically isn't available to the average citizen. So therefore, yeah, well, could we do some training? Sure, we could. But what is the odds of those trainers or those students actually being able to interact with the records? It's slim to none because you have to have that search warrant component. Keri and I have been talking more and more with some of the cases we're doing to get more into explaining to just our basic listener or viewer of what those tactics are. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it is important for people to understand more about a lot of the technology and investigative processes because it's not something that's necessarily secret. They're going to hear it if they're on a jury somewhere. So if you get accepted for a jury selection, you're going to hear it. So we spend a lot of time in the courtroom trying to help a jury understand this technology. And oftentimes it will take up days to get them on like a tracking because defense will come in and try to make those waters very muddy to make it seem like it is junk science and to get them disbelieving in what's happening. So I think the more education we can push out there about the pros and cons of this technology or different investigative processes, it's better for the public in general so that when they do get into a courtroom and they're sitting on a jury, they're understanding more. They're not as misguided as a typical jury is when they get into that position.
Yeah. Ms. Potts will talk. Chris, is anyone using blockchain technology in law enforcement management systems? Yes, there are some big projects. I'm not going to get into them because my knowledge of those was in a setting that I can't talk about. But I can tell you blockchain is being looked at. It is the new thing for RICO. Law enforcement is, well, certain people within law enforcement are very aware of it. It is being looked at. It is being tracked. Blockchain is not anonymous. It is actually very easy to track if you know what you're doing. But yeah, there's some really cool programs out there right now that focus on blockchain. Just to answer that one really quick.
Best of me. Have either of you had to take a little bit or do a little bit of different narcotics just to see what it feels like?
Isn't that a 50 Cent song? Just a little bit or something like that?
I don't know what it feels like when people are on these different drugs.
Well, I'm going to try to drink a little wine here as I contemplate that to see what the wine feels like. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. No, I never have. However, this is something that they talk to you about in the academy. I think if you're going to go deep undercover, if you're going to go hang out with Hell's Angels for part of your life, I think that's probably a little bit important, but even they really don't either.
And I wouldn't, I got to be honest, like I am not a good person when it comes to drugs, like basic painkillers. If I have an operation knock me out, I want nothing to do with it.
That's true. Yeah. I think you get sick smoking cigars.
Why do you do that?
Well, I don't know. That way no one will send you a Cuban cigar or something. I'm sorry. You're right.
Let's talk about this.
Leftina 2010 again. How many death penalty cases have you saved people by going on the witness stand? I haven't done any.
People aren't going to like this stat.
Mm-hmm.
Every death penalty case that I've ever been involved on, the death penalty was issued. Everyone. Because I've only been involved on the prosecution side. I'm talking about dispo cases, right? Cases that have already gone through the system. Any death penalty case I've ever been involved with has been on the prosecution side, and every one of those resulted in a finding of the death penalty. And in those cases, I don't know, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But make it very clear. If I ever saw something that was clear that either I was wrong or somebody else was wrong or interpretation was wrong, I have zero qualm saying, okay, we need to look at this again. We could have got it wrong. we needed. My first death penalty case conviction was 2003. I think I've had about a dozen in my entire career, maybe 15 actually. But 2003 was the first one I can think of as the earliest in my career, and that one is still decades away from being actually executed. So there is a very, very, very long appeal process that goes with death penalty cases. And I can tell you right now, I'd be the first one to say if I saw something that I was like, oh, we missed that, or that wasn't available at the time, or maybe we need to reconsider that, I have zero problem saying, yeah, let's put the brakes on this and look at it. So
Yeah.
that's what that's worth. Weird question. Is it hard to get messages from Facebook? Nope. I had something happen and had to prove it to Facebook, but the police
Proof of
said
it
it
through
was
Facebook.
hard to do that. Well, you have to write a search warrant. Facebook messages are very easy to get. You just have to write a search warrant. If it's a low-level crime, I'm talking like trespassing, misdemeanor domestic violence, something like that without some major issue tied in there, it's probably patrol who's saying, hey, we're not going to write a search warrant for that.
A lot of people aren't aware of how to, well, I can't say a lot of people. There are some law enforcement practitioners who aren't very aware or practiced at writing search warrants for technology and social media. And it can be scary because when you do write a search warrant, you have to be spot on. However, at the same time, you shouldn't be so intimidated by it that you don't learn how to do it. So I'd like to say maybe it was just too low level of a crime, but I don't know what you experienced.
Tommy, good to see you there, Tommy.
Yeah, hi, Tommy. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, we'll have to do a collab one of these days. Get you in the studio. Hey, is corruption in law enforcement happen more often now than 20 years ago? No.
Yeah.
I will tell you my experience is, and you know what? I want to be careful with throwing around the word corruption. And I think at the end, the definition is the same. I'm just qualifying it a little bit. I think law enforcement stepped out of bounds a lot more back in the day. It just wasn't known as well. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have everybody in the world streaming. We didn't have the way to capture what we see today. I think what we see now is everything, right? And when we see everything, it brings that spotlight back to it. I can tell you in my career, the things that I was seeing in the 90s that was just kind of normal operations, you would never see today. And what I mean by that in a good way, it's been really cleaned up. And it's not necessarily that things were being done bad back then. It's just very different. I don't know how far in the weeds I want to go with that one.
Maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't. I think the statute of limitations is over. But yeah, Tommy, I personally believe that what we see more than anything today, there's two things. There's just malfeasance, and I'm going to throw incompetence in there. We hire people too easily. We've raised the level to get hired as a law enforcement officer to such extremes that you're not getting the best candidates all the time. And that incompetence and just malfeasance gets to such an extreme, it's easier to digest as some type of conspiracy opposed to like, well, how do they not know that? No, they really don't know that. I've been in that room. And the second piece is, I think that it's too easy for a good person to make a bad decision who happens to be in law enforcement and then make a worse decision by trying to cover it up opposed to just saying I screwed up. And at the end of the day, if we all agree that's corruption, then yeah, maybe. But I think, if you look at any other, we've all done things.
Keep your hands down. You're putting thumbs up all over the screen.
Oh, sorry. When I was, I think 11, I drove a 4-wheeler or a 3-wheeler into my uncle's truck and I made a big dent and then I ran home. I didn't want to tell him I did it. I wasn't corrupt. I was just scared and dumb and I made a terrible decision. Yeah. And I think we see that a lot in law enforcement now.
Right. And I think our hiring processes have gotten too laxed in law enforcement. It's kind of like hiring a choir teacher who can't read music to teach students how to sing Bach or something like Handel's Messiah or something, right? So I think our hiring practices also need to change as well in the law enforcement space. Angel,
can we see phones that were in a crime scene at the time of the crime? It depends. there's so many different types of technology that we have to look at, and some limitations on that technology of how we can get to that data. I have had cases where we have been able to tell what people were in what room. I've had other cases where I couldn't tell you if the suspect was even in the zip code. So it really depends on what are we getting. L. Smith, can you explain briefly what the chain of command is if you get a call for an unconscious person, but get there and the person has been murdered? Well, he's definitely unconscious. Could law enforcement contaminate the scene before detectives arrive? Yes, more than law enforcement, medical personnel. You know, the first thing is if we get an unconscious person, it's medical. We need to save that person first. And we're going to throw everything we have at the life-saving. And life-saving is nothing more than evidence eradication. So
we have an episode coming up on this.
that's actually in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Or no, wait. Yeah, because Penny for Your Thoughts, and then we have a blood spatter the week after that. So in 2 weeks, we have a case that gets into this L. Smith, pretty wild. And we talk about some of the contamination and different things. You know, this is the importance of documentation. Contamination isn't necessarily a bad thing. I would argue on an unconscious person, or at least a call that came in as an unconscious person, if we don't have some contamination, law enforcement screwed up, because the idea is that person's not dead. So I would expect them to treat that scene like we're saving somebody's life up to the point we realize, oh, they're already dead. And then what's done is done. It's no big deal. We just need to make sure we document it. That helps. Too much info.
In your personal experience, what is the number one reason people commit murder?
Emotion, love,
personal gain.
Yeah, for me, it's that emotional love. I think I've seen more DV-related passion murders than anything else. The financial gain is there, but it's usually tied to that emotional piece too. Once in a while, we'll get financial, and then we just get thug, like people just killing.
Yeah. I guess it also depends on where you're at.
Right.
Because I think there might be some detectives who just see murders just for like thugged out personal gain more than love. I don't know.
Why is touch DNA used when there are so many questions about it? I wouldn't say there's questions about touch DNA. I would say touch DNA is solid. Like if I have DNA, I have DNA. And if I have a full profile, I have a full profile. It's something you got to address. The touch part is how did it get there? You know, if I'm finding DNA on the gear shift in my car, then that person was in the car. If I'm finding DNA on a cup in the cup holder, doesn't necessarily mean somebody's in that car, right? So I don't think there's any issues. Like the next one. I don't think there's any issues with touch DNA. I think you just have to be able to tell a story of how that item got into that place that it was found. That's so significant. Would you do a show on Netflix?
We tried, but people really wanted a lot of our money to create like a comic book of our stories first, and then they might possibly be able to get us into somebody on Netflix. So if any of you have some inside trading secrets of how we could get onto Netflix and actually meet or talk to people there.
Yeah, but I don't think we want Netflix. We have an idea. In fact, we're working on it now. It's coming, people. Since he asked, let's talk about this a little bit. Let's divulge. We are currently in the process of putting together what's probably going to be a 12 to 15 part series of a really high profile, really crazy case. And I think what we're going to do instead of doing Netflix is we're going to release it on YouTube and members. So you have to be a member. And I think our membership for that level, I don't know, $5-6 a month. But you can literally sign up that month, binge all 12 episodes, and then sign off the next month. So
eliminate the middleman.
Yeah, I think we're just going to do our own. But we definitely have some of those coming. So I like that question. It helps support that. I love this saying. If we go fishing, can you teach me to cast? I'm a terrible fisherman, too fast for fleas.
You don't fish.
But I do cast pretty well. How long did you guys do as cops? I was right at 20 years. Keri was at 8.
Mm-hmm.
So between the two of us, 28 years. A vase for law enforcement.
Have you ever come across a case?
Tunnel vision. And it's derailed the case in court. Yes. A lot of times it doesn't make it to court. But yes, I have come across some big things that derailed the court case. Sometimes we can save it, and sometimes the damage is too much. And I want to be really outspoken with this part. A lot of people emotionally get involved with the defendant. Did he do it? Did she do it? Did she not do it? Did she do it? And then we see this tunnel vision and we talk about, well, they get off or they don't get off. The real injustice here is the family, the victim. And that's what really, I think, speaks to me is I can't stand when I see law enforcement screwing up a case where at the end of the day, I don't care about the defendant. Is the case so screwed up that we can never get justice for these victims or victim, or can we? And that's where it gets really frustrating, because if you screw up with the wrong defendant, all right, we can always fix that later if we find the other defendant. But if you screw it up and that is the true suspect, that is the true sexual assaulter or whatever it might be, and you screw that case up, the victims are never getting that justice. And I got to be honest, that's the piece that gets me. So Angel, for that part, man, I hate seeing that. We want to fix it if we can, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're all here for. But yeah, it happens. What else we got going on here?
I don't know. Let's scroll back into our Darren Hale thing. Did we miss anything?
Oh, I did have a couple of those. Yeah,
so we got into all these questions because there's so many great ones coming in, but Sai had a whole list of things that he wanted to talk about.
I only had 4 or 5. We can go through them really quick. I
Okay.
love the one person. I used the phrase dime him out. They had to look that up. And I guess I revealed my age. Dime him out means back in the day, the snitch figured out what was going on and they had to tell law enforcement. So they had to run to a payphone because there's no cell phone and put a dime in and call the cops and rat him out. So it was, if you got dimed out, it's because somebody used the payphone to report you. Oh, new technology coming today that you find yourself really interested in. Oh, we'll talk about that. I'll come back to that one. Give me just a second.
Okay.
Mercy Cat, I don't know if you're listening tonight, but man, I love her comments. Apparently her Rottweilers, when they hear the show come on, they just sit down and like at attention.
Yeah.
So her comments lately are, my Rottweilers are wondering the stats on criminals' use of victims' phone or etc. to fool law enforcement. I have seen that quite a bit, both phone calls and text messages. Obviously, DV cases are the most profound. But if you get enough of the history, it's really easy to identify those patterns completely changed around the time of the crime. So where a lot of people might think it's fooling law enforcement, a lot of times it actually helps the case because we can show, okay, here's when the pattern changes, like the D and the Darren tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, you have to consider that your cell phone usage is going to be very different than your spouse's or your siblings' usage, or one of your friends, or even your children. So we can start identifying patterns of how somebody uses their phone, the things that they browse, what time they're using their phone, that we can see where patterns of behavior change to help associate if somebody's using someone else's device.
Oh.
At Gail22, oh, did I just click on something else?
Yeah, no, I got this.
Shoot.
I got this.
This was from at Gail2276, I think. Go ahead.
No, I just changed it. Because
you
I
just
like
changed
this
it?
one. Sorry.
Oh.
What did Gail say?
I don't know.
I thought that was the
I
old
can't
one
find
from the episode.
Oh,
we're good.
okay.
Chris, I'm actually working on that. I am going to, I won't promise you anything yet. I'm actually trying to make a customized Socialite Crime Club cap that we'll have a link to. We're working on it. We'll come back. Let's pick some new ones. Pick one. Keri or Bree.
I like this
Anwar,
one.
you guys see anything that needs
Love
to get up
Tina again, 2010. She has great questions. Is there new technology coming in today that you find yourself really interested in? I think you should talk about this.
You think?
Yeah.
So a lot of you, if you don't know, Keri and I started a company called ZETX, Z-E-T-X, back in 2014. And what we were trying to do at that time is we were trying to create a better system to map this geolocation data from devices and other types of location data. We sold that company in 2021. I have a really stiff non-compete, so I can't play in this field for a little bit. But we've jumped back in, and because of AI and some of the new technologies that's coming out, we are figuring out some really cool stuff right now. And it's just a matter of time before we jump back into this market. We've got some cutting edge stuff, and I'm really excited about where it's going, but there's some legalities and we got to play fair. But yes, we are very much in. I am not done by any means. Keri and I thought we were going to retire. Then we got bored. Keri was going to get a job at the post office, and that's when I'm like, we've hit rock bottom. It's time to go back and start doing things.
I was very bored at one point. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Throw some more up there. Let's see. What do we got here?
Okay. Can you explain briefly what the chain of command is if you get a call for an unconscious person?
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm way back. How about you jump into some more comments of what you were going to address for?
I'm still saying not Twiz is Twiz. Can you make copyrights while under the non-compete? Maybe. How dangerous is being a confidential informant? Actually, there's a bunch of laws and regulations about confidential informants under the age of 18. If you have a confidential informant who's under the age of 18, there's something going on very unusual. Either the parent is directly involved because it's a sex crimes victim and they're working with trying to take out a predator directly under the supervision of the parent. But typically it's always over 18. And it really depends on where you're at. If you're on the East Coast, don't be in a confidential informant. I've had more confidential informant cases
get whacked.
But they got whacked. Literally, that's what they whacked Bobby Joe.
Yeah, I would not want to be in New York and be a confidential informant.
Yeah. Man, I think we're at 1,000 comments. I don't know if I can keep
We have 668 people in this live. I think you won.
Oh, I did win. Because some of us are optimists and some of us are pessimists.
I know. Stop.
When law enforcement downloads a phone, how are the results affected, even if the person is using Telegram signal? It really depends. If you have all that stuff on your phone, it's going to be there. If you delete or you try to wipe your phone, it can be very complicated. It also depends on the product. And this is where law enforcement really gets in a bind. And, this may come across as incompetence to a lot of people, but it's a financial thing. There are 3 well-known forensic extract tools, and I'm not going to plug any of them or get into them, but let's just say there's 3 big companies, 3 players in the forensic cell phone extract world. They're all expensive. The problem is if you want to make sure you're getting everything, you need a crime lab that has all 3 of those tools, and I run the phone through all 3 of those processes. The problem is, at the end of the day, justice has a cost. There's a price tag attached to it. So a lot of agencies won't have access, or they have to rely on other bigger agencies to do this for them. And then you get case backlog and it's delayed and there's all kinds of problems. But at the end of the day, I need to use all the tools available to make sure I get it right, because one company may be really good at recovering one piece of data and then suck at this one part, but then this other company is really good at it. So unless I can buy all of them, which a lot of agencies can't, I just miss some of that data.
Not only can they not afford the equipment, they can't afford the manpower to use the equipment on a consistent basis and stay trained and updated to use that equipment.
I have never worked with Elon Musk, just for the record. I'm not opposed to it.
Elon Musk, I highly doubt will ever know who we are.
He's weird, but I'm kind of digging the dude.
I actually met somebody, last week in Wyoming. I was in Wyoming last week. And he said his daughter actually photographs, with this crazy camera, outer space UFOs, and she can see the writing in her images on these outer space UFOs that it looks similar to old style Egyptian writing. And she's contracting with Elon Musk to do something. I don't know if I believed him or if I just didn't know, but he showed me these pictures on his phone and I just didn't know what to think of that. It was weird. So I gave you some time to find the next question.
Translucent. What was our, Bree, you may have to help me here. If you have to jump in, you can come off mute. What was our cartel episode?
Oh, what was it? That was a while ago. I don't know. We did have a cartel episode.
Translucent. We did an episode.
The Real Miami Vice.
The Miami guys.
What was our cartel episode?
We did an episode on a cartel that involved a shooting of a poor single female in Gilbert, and then it rolled into this giant cartel. 100% on that one, where that spider web or that fishing net, if you will, got so big, we had to just stop and hand that off to a different agency and focus back on our homicide because we just had so many suspects of different crimes. But yes, that is actually more common than most people realize. People who commit a lot of crimes commit a lot of crimes, and it's very easy to get lost in all of the crimes they've committed. Oh,
Chronic Christy, thank you for your donation. Well, your generosity of $4.99. Can someone retain you preemptively in case they go missing or become a suspect someday?
Yes, Chronic Christy, and you just did with that $4.99. We have a deal this week, $4.99. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think we should probably talk about this? Like, why do you think you're going to go missing? And more importantly, why do you think you're going to become a suspect? I guess this could be like an insurance plan. If you ever go missing or a suspect, we're just automatically retained.
An insurance policy of this?
I think it's got to be more than $4.99 though.
Well, you might have a lot of
That's
work
really
on your
interesting.
plate.
Hey, Christy, Christy, let's chat. I'm really, maybe we can talk you out of being the suspect. Yeah. That might be the easier.
Or you can run our website.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. East Coast versus West Coast. Oh, yeah. East Coast throws down. And I know, man, I don't want to get in any gang rivalries here. I know a lot of people talk about West Coast gangsters in LA. East Coast is old school, man. They don't play. Some of the most violent confidential informant death cases I've ever seen are all out of the East Coast. Most of them the Northeast. Like, you get up in that New York, Boston, Virginia, DC area, they just don't play, man. You start dropping dimes there, they just kill you.
I think it's the weather. I would be very angry if I were in that weather all the time too.
Yeah. I don't know if that really answered that question, but maybe. Oh, wait, Miss Potts throwing down again.
Thank you, Miss Potts.
Thank you, Miss Potts.
$10 from Miss Potts.
Let's throw Mary Holt. I don't think we have. Yeah, we saw Mary earlier. If a cell phone syncs up with a car, oh. It's a great question, Mary. We actually built a system that detects that, which is really cool. I'm going to freak a bunch of people out right now, but there's technology out there that I can deploy. And when you start your car and your car actually connects to your phone, I can see that connection very easily. And then we can track that connection. So the idea is over a period of time, depending on where we have this equipment, we can actually match phones to cars. And we can say, okay, this car always has this single phone. Oh, look, last Thursday, it had these two unknown phones. You had two passengers with you. We don't get into content. And I think the thing for everybody to remember with content, anytime you're doing anything that's getting into content requires a wiretap. And wiretaps are hard.
Content or location information. You have to have a search warrant.
Search warrant on the location.
Oh, you're talking about specifically.
But if you're getting content, even if it's through your car system, if I'm seeing what people are actually saying or I'm hearing what people are saying, I have to have a wiretap, and that's very difficult.
So for instance, jail calls. If we're listening to jail calls, we have to have a warrant because that is considered a wiretap. And that is one of the worst jobs in the world. You actually feel like you are less of a person. I made
Keri do this once. You should tell this story.
So Cy had a gig one night where he had to go listen to a bunch of jail calls because there were a bunch of cell phones in the jail illegally.
We were tracking cell phones in a prison with the intention of building a case to go in and remove all these cell phones from the prison. And because cell phones in prisons are contraband, we didn't need a wiretap. So we had the equipment and the ability to park at the prison, and we could listen to all of the prison calls at once. But I made Keri go with me.
We had just started dating, and we hadn't had a lot of time together. So I think he thought this would be a good way for us to spend some time together, was to listen to jail calls on cell phones that had been intercepted or were there illegally. It was one of the worst nights of my life because
you can't unhear it.
When you listen to prisoners talking to their girlfriends or their spouses of, hey, baby, you're going to wait for me. You ain't ever going to go out. Like, you aren't going out, are you? What'd you go do today? Who'd you see? It is so debilitatingly exhausting to listen to because you feel like you're listening.
I got to put the camera on you there. No, speak directly to the camera.
You feel like you're listening.
I'm feeling your emotion.
Yeah, you feel like you're listening to teenagers and you're just drained. because you feel dumber after the calls are done and while you're listening to them, and you would just want to go home and go to sleep and be done. Yeah, but that would be a wiretap.
Okay, hang on. Angel, behave. And you know what I'm talking about. Get that out of here. All right. How does someone marry someone that murdered their previous spouse? At least he got himself a young one. Ugh.
Is this in relation to the case? This was.
How does someone marry someone that murdered their previous spouse? Oh, and then he got himself. Yeah, because Muncie. Aubrey. Yeah. Man, that's a tough one.
I don't know. I'm telling you, he must have really liked her.
No, because if you find your soulmate, like if you really connect at that level, I'm trying to put myself in Muncie's shoes. If Keri Ray told me tonight, hey, I whacked this dude back in the day, I'd be like, all right, well, you're still hot. I still love you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if you find that right person, it doesn't matter. I would support you.
I would support you too.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, look at Madame Van Cook. I also recognize this profile picture as Dina Sewell. A SCC comic book and murder mystery game would be super cool. Ooh.
Wait. Go back. Who do you recognize?
What? Madame Van Cook, but I also recognize her profile picture as Dina Sewell. Dina,
educate or me. I'm a caveman. I don't know what you're talking about.
She's one of our more common commenters and visitors to Socialite Crime Club. She's a great socialite.
Oh, I thought you meant you recognized this picture as something else.
I do recognize her profile picture.
It's her profile picture.
But it typically comes up under Dina Sewell.
Madame, make sure you you hit me at that email too, please.
Thank you, Madame.
Just drop us a quick
Van Cook for your $20 contribution to Socialite Crime Club. We appreciate you.
Torture listening to prison calls. Yes, she was.
AI would be a cost-effective way to do it. And since you already have episodes, I love the show. I'm your biggest fan. Keep up the great content. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We will consider a comic book. That might be fun. We have a lot of creative content creators who work behind us, behind the scenes, I should say, and they're on the call. Brianna, and I think Anwar had to jump off, but they would be.
Hang on, I got to start that one so I can come back. All right, I'm jumping into the other one. Deborah, can you give an estimation of trafficked children on a yearly basis? That's the scary part. I look at trafficked children very similar to us looking at how many people cross the border a year. We get the numbers, but we don't know. And when we talk about trafficked children, we'll get numbers, but we don't know. It is amazing how many we don't know about, and it's a scary thought. But even more than one is too many. We have an episode coming up, that Spider and the Fly. I'm going to really keep plugging that because this episode I think is going to be really gripping for people. And we're going to start off with that one. That we have a lot of people who have a hard time watching episodes with children, child crimes. But we're going to challenge all of our potential listeners and viewers here. You got to, because when you don't listen to this, when you don't involve yourself in it, you don't realize you become part of the problem, because it's education. Education is power. It's knowledge. Everybody knows a kid. Wait, it's not your kid, grandkids, your friends' kids, your neighbors' kids. And the more knowledge we can spread, the better. So that's what that episode's all about. But we also have one of our series. We have a documentary we're trying to put together right now that I think is really going to bring some light to this. We have a really high profile case that we just wrapped up of a serial child killer. And it's terrible. It's horrifying. And a lot of people are going to suffer getting through some of those episodes, but it brings to light the methodologies that he used to attract these children, how he would target these children. And then more importantly, we have a really loud message of how everyday citizens can help fix this problem. And you need community support. You've got to get everybody on board. You've got to get everybody behind it. I'm super excited about it. There's a lot going on. It's going to be a while before we get that one out, but when it comes out, it's going to be super cool. I'm really excited about that.
There's potentially also a little bit more investigation that needs to take place before we can write that episode or series to our best abilities.
Yeah, we're getting there.
I think we're coming to an end here. Look at that. We have 827 viewers here. So thank you so much for joining us and coming to Socialite Crime Club to hang out with us. We appreciate you and your views and comments tonight.
You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
All right. We got two Hoodie's going out. Keri screwed it up early on by actually saying her 85. What happened?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
My attendance guess was 565. So we'll go back through the comments starting at this time. Hey, Bree, mark the time because Twizzle, who's probably hiding under a different alias, is going to send in 565 right now. So keep an eye on him. But we'll go back through the comments. The two people that are closest to 565, we will be in contact. We're going to send you two of our little our hoodies. Well, a hoodie to each one.
Yeah.
But that'll be fun there.
So make sure that you email Cy at burningmountainproductions.com with your mailing information, if you have a P.O. box, or if you trust us enough to give us your address to send you your hoodie. That would be great.
All right, hang on. Let's go to Bree. Hey, Bree, anything we're missing we need to throw in there before we head out here? Angel was told to behave. Everything is right in the world again. Yes, Shaggy. I got you.
Yes, Miss Potts, I was subjected to emotional torture.
We're gonna have to go back through and read some of these. These are great.
Intellectual torture, emotional torture.
And I think more than anything, you know what? I think I got to do a quick shout out before we wrap this up to our supers. I don't know. Our best episode, I think, made $6. We made more in 10 minutes tonight than we've made, I think, in the last 9 months. So thank you guys. We really appreciate it. We're not here for the money, but it's always helpful because it'll help fund other things. And we do have employees and everything else now. So it's really great to see that. And I just can't express my appreciation of. So thank you guys very much.
Well, more importantly, it's going to help fund bigger projects that we need to get more information out on and awareness, such as trafficking of children and sexual abuse victims, as well as helping people understand mindsets of serial killers.
OCD Shaggy says it's our wine fund. Yeah, we might have a problem there. All right, we're going to wrap this up with our last question of the night, and it's going to Angel
Castillo. Thank you.
How accurate is Live 360? It's very accurate, Angel. Now, there's a couple things that I can do to throw off the accuracy of my phone, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds because I could talk about an hour for this. There's ways that I can change the GPS that my phone thinks it's receiving. So if the phone isn't accurate, then what the Life 360 app is getting is also not accurate. But unless I'm getting into my phone and nefariously setting something up to alter that or to somehow cloak that, it's very accurate. Now, it's big data. There's always going to be errors in big data. I've seen some Life 360 stuff where it's hitting beautifully, and then all of a sudden we get this crazy flyer that can be a different state away, but it's obvious, right? So there's other things we can corroborate back to and we can clean it up. But for the most part, Life 360 is very accurate. And if you're throwing it on your kids' phones, that's great. By the way, we have this really cool company that we've endorsed. You're going to start seeing some ads coming out on the next couple episodes. I'm not going to get into it on this one, but there's been a lot of questions tonight about, hey, how about this? How about that? Child trafficking, sex trafficking. Yeah. We have partnered with a company, and this is not an advertisement tonight. We have partnered with a company that has
they haven't approved the message.
Yeah, they haven't approved the message here. That has some really cool technology that we feel will take a major role in combating this. So those of you that are still listening to us, in the next few weeks, you're going to start seeing us pushing kind of an advertisement. We're going to talk a little bit about it in the beginning of each episode. Don't fast forward. They contacted us, but we partnered with them because of what they're doing. We believe in the product. It's really cool. It's very affordable, and it will make a dent in child sex trafficking. We know it will. So listen to it, kick it out there. We're actually really excited about this partnership.
Yeah.
Look at this coming in. That Laura chick.
Sarah. Yes. Thank you, Sarah, for your contribution to Socialite Crime Club. We appreciate you.
Yeah. And then that Laura chick.
Oh,
there you go. You're the best. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah. Look how curly her hair is. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think my favorite comment of the night is I saw one in here that says Keri's
Y'all are the
hot.
best. Can't wait to see everything you're about to do. Thank you so much. We appreciate your contribution.
And whoever said Keri's hot, I second that one.
You saw that?
Yeah, someone put Keri's hot.
No, thank you.
Sorry, are you working on the Delphi case? What do you think about the phone randomly connecting the tower several hours before it stopped moving?
First, DB, thank you for your contribution.
All
We
right, he paid
appreciate you.
$5. I got to answer. I am not working on the Delphi case. I know a lot of the people that are working on the Delphi case. I'm going to keep my opinions to myself right now because there's a lot in that case that I think still needs to come out and still needs to be explored. And I'm not saying needs to be explored by the investigators, that needs to be explored by the media and people tracking that case. There's a lot to come on that case. I don't want to get involved with that case.
I'm glad you aren't.
Yeah, I've already made it very clear. I'm not going to. I've had some conversations. I'm not throwing my hat in that case. I'm just not going to do it. I do think they have the right guy. I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of things, and DB hits a good point here. There's a lot of things that need to be rooted out. There's still some work that probably needs to be cleaned up. But I'm not going to be biased. I know I'm not going to be biased, but from what
you
I
haven't
do
seen
know,
all of the facts.
from what I do know, I like what I'm seeing as it relates to the defendant that they've identified. I'll just put it that way.
Okay, but we haven't seen all of the facts in that case yet, so nobody can truly speak to it.
I've seen quite a bit.
Stop.
Thanks, DB.
I think we're answering so many questions. We're not going to be able to do another live with great questions coming in again
Sure we
soon.
will.
So,
Sounds like Ken MSP to take some lessons from you.
are you reading another question here?
There's just so many still coming in. I'm trying to catch up here.
I know, but we do need to eat some dinner soon.
Stop it. Sketches the way.
And we have 943 people who've joined us.
That is so
Wow.
cool.
Yeah, that's great. I honestly was not expecting that many. I seriously thought.
Where do you
told
see
Cy-
that? I'm such an.
It's up at the top.
I'm a
Oh,
caveman
yours
here.
isn't showing up for some reason.
Oh no, we have 200 friends. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Do you guys go to Freddy's?
What's Freddy's?
Yeah, what is Freddy's? I'm telling you, that's Twiz.
I don't even know where you're reading that. Are you just in the comments?
Oh, somebody else's show starts in 5 minutes. Hang on. What is
okay.
this? I just had it right here.
Yes.
Not Twiz. Add it later. Show starts in 5 minutes.
Oh,
All
I
right,
see that.
5 minutes. Go do your show. You guys need a pee break.
Yeah.
We are out for the night. Again, I can't thank you guys enough. We had a great turnout, which is really cool to see. Every Sunday, we've got some fun stuff coming. Next week is going to be, we're going to get into geolocation data, AT&T Nellos, and what they call locabore. But we're going to talk specifically about the accuracy of AT&T's ping data and get in there. So some fun stuff with that all the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sherry D, for your super sticker. We appreciate your contribution and for hanging out with us tonight. And to all of our socialites, we wish you a healthy, happy, and safe week. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, and to finish that up, I can't go to Freddy's. Keri doesn't let me eat fast food because I've been getting fat lately. So no Freddy's for me. All right, Bree, you got something to take us out of here? Thank you guys. Again, very, very,
very
fun
fun.
time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Good.
We'll see you on our next live.
Socialite Crime Club.